High Fidelity is the latest adaptation of the Nick Hornby novel, reimagined with a whole new cast headed up by Zoe Kravitz. I'm Rob Licuria, senior editor at Gold Derby, and I'm here with Jake Lacy, who stars as on-again, off-again, potential love interest Clyde. And anyone who's seen the show knows that Clyde is a really fascinating character. Let's talk about him for a bit more, Jake. The show's co-creator, Sarah Kasurka, recently told me that when you were offered the role, you asked how this guy is not just the wallpaper. There's more to it than just what you see. Can you talk us through what you meant by that?
Yeah, you know, I have been fortunate enough to, be a part of some wonderful things. And often the part that I've played in a lot of ways kind of is a character that completes somebody else's arc, you know? And so a lot of times those characters are left a little, they're not fleshed out as well because their part of the story is to assist someone else's narrative, you know? And I was like, you know, I'm just a little tired sometimes of being in a position where this character seems to shift from one personality to another just based on what the story or the format needs and not really what that person would do or say, or, you know. And they were incredibly thoughtful and responsive to that initially, and then more importantly, at least to me, made good on that. Anytime I would ask a question or maybe push back, but really just say, like, what is this? Like, how is this affecting the story or this character, you know, that they took that seriously, or led me to believe they were taking it seriously, which, you know, I was just really thankful for. It's like, if you see the show, Clyde starts out as, you know, kind of a date that she goes on, and then you see him have a backbone through the whole thing, you know, even though he's enamored with this girl and she's not really giving him the time of day, and that he's, you know, maybe just trying to hash out the difference between being like a good guy and a nice guy, that that you can still be a good guy and not always be like the nicest guy.
Yeah. I noticed if you Google your work, what you've done in the past, a lot of people want to talk to you about the nice guy. I'm sure you're so sick and tired of hearing it, but it just happens to be that some of the roles that you've played have been that archetype. But was it refreshing though for this production that even though Clyde is fine, he's loved, he's nice, but there's so much more to him that is not really said, but you're kind of giving off with your performance. What are you doing internally, maybe without even being told by the producers internally, to kind of give him that depth and backstory?
You know, first, thank you for saying that. I think it's very kind. My hope was that rather than having Clyde be, well, essentially it's like, what would bring these two people together, right? In the format of some like rom-com, it's just sort of accepted now that you're like, they're oil and water. Can you believe they're together? And it's like, well, no, I don't. So why are they together? You know, other than like the format telling us this is how the story starts, and then they find that they actually have more in common, and then they complete each other. You know, it's like, that just isn't very fulfilling, because I think you're starting off with a lie to the audience, you know? And so then my hope was to be like, so why are they actually into each other? Like, what is it that they actually have that creates the little thing, even on their first date, that she's like, I'm going to take this guy home, and that he's like, I'm into this chick, you know? And so for me, my hope was that Clyde had moved here to New York, having probably made some poor decisions in the past in terms of relationships or his behavior in them, or who he chose to be in relationships with, things like that, and is trying to make in his mind, more mature choices. But that's hard. It's hard to like rewire yourself. It's hard to not be attracted to the mess if you've been attracted to the mess for a long time. And so trying to find a way that he also is, he's trying to be a good guy and is sometimes succeeding and sometimes isn't, but that feels a little more true, at least to me as a human and what I'm trying to do in this world, you know, trying to be a good guy, than to just sort of be like, I'm chill. Is like, okay, no one is like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, nobody actually is just like, I'm good for anything.
Yeah, exactly. I'm so glad you said that, because at first that's what I was kind of expecting with this character. But he actually offers so much more. And I think that it's the point outside the bar when Clyde's kind of, you know, he's having a bout of introspection, I assume, or I suppose, sorry. And Rob goes out there and realizes, you know, like, oh, you know, maybe she has been really unfair to him. And you can see there's a lot of pain in his demeanor, in your demeanor, and how you performed it. And I'm just thinking, like, can you take us back to that scene? Was it challenging to do? Did you find that you kind of had it from the get-go, or what was that like?
You know, I was really pleased with that scene. I was pleased with how it was written and directed, and also that, you know, that type of scene as an actor is easily either written or played as like combative. To be like, what is this, you know, like, are we together, are we not, you know, like, it's a big fight. And I was more interested, and thankfully, like Zoe was as well, in exploring this more, like, to me, nuanced idea of like that he's both really disappointed that he's not getting an answer in terms of like what this relationship is, and is also acutely aware of being like, you don't owe me anything. You know, this isn't a marriage that I'm saying like, are we getting divorced? It's a guy that she went on a date with, she slept with once, they've hung out a couple times. She must know I'm into her, and I'm kind of getting jerked around. But if this isn't a thing for her, she has every right to. And he's not trying to be like, you owe me a relationship. And so he's caught between, again, trying to be like, I desperately would like an answer as to what we're doing here for my own sanity. I also don't think it's right to force that on you, which I think also, I hope, makes the story for Rob it's harder for her to like push back and blow it off.
Yeah.
Because it's not someone being like, gimme, gimme, gimme. It's someone saying like, can you step up to the plate? And then she can't. And so it's clearly like her own deficiency or disinterest in the relationship or ability to commit to it, and not just a defensiveness of a guy being like, give me the thing I want, and her being like, this is too much. Yeah. And so that felt more sad and hopeful and heartbreaking than just a fight outside a bar. And then, thankfully, they go inside because Cam is in this, you know, confrontation, and Clyde pops off on the wrong, you know, on some hips who like kind of jostles this girl that he's into, and just can't help but like pop this kid, you know, and that again for me, for Clyde, is like, man, this is the thing I'm trying to not be a part of. I'm trying to not date girls who are elusive and can't give me an answer, and then I'm hanging out at bars and getting in fights, and like, man, I thought I was doing good.
Yeah, I've relapsed.
Essentially.
Yeah. It's so important to get into this character. It was that moment for me that it clicked for me. And I'm like, okay, I get him, because a lot of us have been there. And I think that is the key to High Fidelity for people who haven't seen it yet. It's very lived in. It's very authentic. And I kept wondering, what I feel so familiar in this space. I've never been in Brooklyn. I've been there many times. I never lived there, but I feel like I'm kind of part of this scene. And Sarah and even Divine, when I spoke to her, they were both really conscious of making the show authentic. Obviously, that helps you when you're informing this character. He's a real person. He's not just a cardboard cutout. So that must be very refreshing. But were you getting a lot of notes about the authenticity and trying to make it feel real and lived in?
You know, I think a lot of that vibe, a lot of that sense that's sort of like untangible thing is really a credit to Zoe, to the producers, to the writers. You know, like they built this world that I got to step into and be a part of, you know, and along the way, we're continually like pulling it in that direction. You know, like there's a version of the show that is like real bubblegum. You know what I mean? That's very like, she's a crazy girl and owns a record shop and she's going to date people, you know? And it's like that show could easily exist. And I don't think that's what Zoe wanted to do. I don't think that's what anybody on the team wanted to do. And so they were consciously like, every opportunity, like, let's pull it in this direction into something a little more chill and weird and real. And that includes like getting to shoot on location as much as possible. So you're shooting in the place that you say you are, you know? And then also, you know, just continually like, there's a scene actually it's that same episode where Clyde's at the bar and they're having this party and they ask where I'm coming from and they've established that Clyde, you know, goes to this climbing gym and Rob sort of rolls her eyes about it. But it's an easy trope in like a TV show to have like a good boyfriend be a volunteer. You know what I mean? To be like, I was helping my little brother with his Eagle Scout project or something equally like hollow and is really just like a little check mark to be like, I'm a good guy, you know? It doesn't actually have anything to do with the character. And initially there was some element to that. And then I spoke to Zoe about it and I was like, just have the guy, I don't know, like have him do something else. And she was like, yeah, have him volunteer at the climbing gym. I was like, yeah, that's right. Like, he can still be a good guy. He can still volunteer. Just like tie it back into the thing you've built, you know? And of course, then when she goes to a producer or whatever, because she is EP on it and says like, this is what I think we should do, they're on board with it. You know, like it's this collaborative, like collective thing of accepting ideas and different paths and directions to be like, we can totally still tell the story. Like no one is suggesting that Clyde is actually a serial killer, you know what I mean? And I'm like, what if? And you're like, no.
No.
You know, it's like, how do we take that thing that you want to tell about this character and tell it in the way that feels more tethered to a reality you've built or feels more true to the world you're creating, and just continually like combing through the story to find those things. It was a joy for me to do that, and also obviously hugely fulfilling to have like people listen to that it's not falling on deaf ears when you say like, shouldn't we? And they're like, dude, just say the lines.
That must be so refreshing. And without casting dispersions on any of your previous work, because I'm sure you've had great experiences. But
let's cast dispersions.
Right? But like, you know, but you got to pay the bills. But I'm just saying with this one, the show's told from a women's perspective, right? And so I thought, okay, they could fall into this trap of the men just being really shallow. But it's so refreshing to be on a show where the men are really evolved and emotionally intelligent, and maybe even more so than the women, because Charisse is really damaged and has lots of walls, and Rob obviously is a mess. Clyde obviously has a lot of pain, as does Mac, but they seem to be a bit more evolved than the women. So I like that the tables are turned. Do you? Like, did you like that aspect?
I guess the thing that I guess I haven't thought of it in that way, to be honest. I do like that there isn't a kind of clear cut, like, this person's got it together, this person doesn't. Or, I mean, it helps with like the episode that's a nod to the film. It's obviously a nod to the book, where Rob visits the exes, you know, and you see like Justin, the stand-up, who she was dating while he was dating someone, and then they dated after that, and it wasn't cool anymore. And, you know, like, and you see even that, you know, the writers, the producers, the director treat like in this kind of nuanced way, where he's like stoked to see a girl that he used to date, and then gets a call from his current girl he's got a kid with, and like they're kind of having an argument, and then he comes back to the girl that he's here with now, but is honest with her, and it's just like, I don't know what to do, man. And I'm kind of, I don't know, I'm probably to blame. It's like, oh, that's refreshing in its honesty, both that the honesty that the character is aware of, and the honesty that the character is not aware of. If that makes any sense. But like, it's not a guy who she goes and visits and he's just like a fall down drunk, and it's easy to be like, oh, that was then. But he's also not some perfect boyfriend that she's like, if only. It's just a guy who ultimately is still kind of figuring it out one way or another, you know, and like, and that feels continually like the thing that the show is dealing with, wherever people fall on the scale of how much they've got it figured out. It's like, even Mac, who is seemingly emotionally maybe more mature than Rob in terms of being ready to commit to something, or, you know, he comes back to New York with a fiance and then is also pursuing his ex-girlfriend. You know what I mean? Like, so that's a guy who's somewhere between emotionally advanced and also struggling to like make that match up with his choices. You know, that is, I think, more honest or human than the trope of just being like, I'm a mess, or being like, I need a commitment. You know, it's like,
yeah, that's so interesting. And then by the season finale, after avoiding Rob's calls, Clyde agrees to meet with her and admits that there's a slight chance they could be friends. So we're left on that kind of cliffhanger, so to speak. We don't know if season 2's happening yet. Hopefully we'll all get told eventually when Hulu decides to renew, hopefully. Do you read that though as Clyde admitting their feelings? Do you want to see them together? Like, what would you like to see for season 2 and Clyde and Rob?
That's tricky, man, because like, as an actor, I would like Clyde to be in every episode.
Yeah.
You know? As a producer, I'm not a producer on it, but the real like heartless boss move would be to not have Clyde in season 2 at all.
Ugh.
That he meant it. That he was like, this is a bad idea. And you know what I mean? Or have him as like an Easter egg, like pass behind her in one shot at a bar. You know, like
that would be cool.
You know, my bank account would like me to be in it, you know, but I also, it's like, I also, it's just a fun, like, it's fun for me to imagine like where the do they, don't they, will they, won't they kind of thing goes. And also like what the, stipulations are on that, you know, or what the expectations are on that from each other. Or, you know, they don't know each other that well. It's like, I don't know. She ends up pursuing Clyde, and Clyde is like more stuck in his past than he thought he was in terms of behaviors, or you know what I mean? Or he wants to fast track this thing, and she's like, dude, you got it. You know what I mean? It's like, whatever that is, it's like, I'm happy to see not just the dysfunction. It's like, I want to see people trying to be better than their dysfunction, and maybe progressing and maybe not. And whether that means two people wind up together or as friends or as exes or like whatever it is, it's like, I want to feel like that's a thing that we're putting out into the world. Because for me, that's what I deal with in my own personal life. And that's the stories I right now like really latch onto as a viewer, is people who are like doing their best. And it's not always perfect, you know?
Yeah. And that's a huge part of this show. And that's why ultimately, before we wrap up,
Sure.
Jake, I think that Clyde has become, he unexpectedly became a real highlight for me and many viewers, because he's real and just doing his thing, and he's nice, but he's also got the flaws, and I wasn't expecting that. So it's a testament to you and to the show, to bringing a character like that to life.
Thank you very much, man. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Now, thanks for your time. Have a good afternoon and good luck. Hopefully we get a season 2 and we can actually see some more of Clyde.
Yeah. Fingers crossed here too, man.
All right. Well, everybody, while you're at home and you're staying safe and healthy, go to Gold Derby, make your predictions for High Fidelity if you wish, and also click subscribe. We have lots and lots of chats with contenders just like Jake.